Hello, and welcome back to the Eastern Mediterranean Times Weekly podcast. I'm your host, Martin Mond.
And I'm your host, Joshua Litke.
All right, jumping right into it. Israel launches a ground assault onto Gaza. Over 9,000 people have been killed and displaced during the conflict, with millions having to move from northern Gaza to southern Gaza. Strikes have been ongoing throughout the past couple weeks, but it's been heating up.
Yes. Yeah, so right now we're looking at a very large ground assault. The Israeli government's been very clear that this is not an invasion per se, even though it has all of the merits of an invasion. And they have been saying it's a counter-terror operation into northern Gaza. They've been urging people again to evacuate from northern Gaza as they seem to be expanding their operation. Israeli troops and tanks are also staying in Gaza rather than leaving and moving back out, which signifies that this is going to be, as Netanyahu, who's the prime minister of Israel, has been saying, a long war and process in, quote-unquote, eradicating Hamas.
Yeah, and this kind of goes against the United States, saying that they want de-escalation. The United Nations, led by coalition Russia and China, saying that they want a ceasefire. This is not going toward that plan at all.
Yeah, and aid organizations have also been trapped in this as well, where we've seen like internet connections being taken out for hours in Gaza, and so many people having been displaced. It's created a humanitarian crisis.
And
in the region.
Those aid groups might actually be getting a little bit of benefit. Starlink and Elon Musk is saying that they might actually be implementing somewhat of a similar system that they used in the early days of the Ukrainian conflict to help aid groups that have been deemed necessary by the United Nations to get that internet coverage back. That's an ongoing story, but it's something to look forward to in the next week.
Yeah, and so while the aid groups might be getting a boost there, it's not just the aid groups and Israel's allies and other actors within the region that are expressing some concern over the ground assault right now, but it's also the people within Israel, where the families of these hostages are very concerned that the hostages might be caught in the crossfires here, where they're being kept in Gaza.
Yeah, a lot of military experts have come out and warned against an full-scale invasion because it could end in the deaths of those hostages, just because you need to negotiate in a hostage release, and it takes a very specific, direct military action to remove them, and a full-scale invasion risks those hostages' lives.
Right.
All right, now another part of the conflict, just north of Israel, Lebanon's local economy is taking a huge hit from the local conflict. There's a story that came out this weekend about a local bakery. They have seen a 75% decline in business. That's coming out of Beirut in Lebanon. That story can be the same across the board, with upwards of 70% decline in local business, people not wanting to participate, go out in the street, buy stuff. They're being more conservative with their spending. They're being more conservative with their social presence, worrying that Hezbollah, a group that controls a significant portion of military in the southern province of Lebanon, could drag the state of Lebanon into a war similar to what we saw in 2006 with the Lebanese-Israeli war. And it's also hitting their tourism industry, which represents about 20% of the GDP of Lebanon. 80% of airlines into the country have stopped since the beginning of the war. And in 2006, the Lebanese government was pretty cohesive, and they were able to use both their cohesiveness and local Syrian airports in Damascus to support bringing people still into the country while the country's at war, bringing resources into the country. But the Damascus airport has been airstriked by Israel for the past couple years now. That's no longer an option for them, and the Lebanese government is not as stable as it was in 2006. Their central banking system is really disheveled, and they're in the middle of economic reconstruction. This is going to really hurt their development.
Yeah, I mean, we're also seeing, talking to the government point, Lebanon doesn't have a president right now.
Yeah.
So the government is fairly unstable at the moment. And while the Lebanese people have been able to be fairly resilient to that instability within the government, um, these conflicts in the region, especially as we're seeing Israel even do strikes against Syrian military targets um, as this conflict goes on, you can definitely see the tension building, and this will definitely hurt the Lebanese economy, as you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, moving to the Greek government, they're looking for a reset after an election loss and the sudden unpopularity with the government that's currently there.
Yeah, so Prime Minister Mitsotakis and his New Democracy Party, in spite of winning a clear majority in the elections earlier this year, have had a string of defeats. On October 15th, there was local elections. The New Democracy lost the two largest cities and 5 out of the 6 regional governor contests during the elections, mainly to united center-left candidates. And this comes as climate change has really ravaged the country with wildfires and extreme weather events, flooding, and the government just hasn't really been able to come up with a cohesive response to these issues. And even in spite of some economic gains that have occurred, the economic losses that are likely going to happen due to climate change and due to these events, and the ongoing immigration crisis that's going on in Greece have mainly been unresolved. And that's really hit Mitsotakis and his political party. They're seen as fairly unpopular, and they're going to really need to do a shift to focus on the economic gains that they have, as we reported last week. And they're going to also need to create a more comprehensive policy in response to climate change and the environment.
Yeah, and their policy toward migration, that got a lot of push a couple weeks ago. Their foreign minister coming out and saying, like, we need to reform this, trying to get the northern European countries on board. That has gone into the back closet because of the voices in Gaza and the conflict in Gaza. And that's really not a good look for the Mitsotakis government, because that's one of their things that they need to push hard. That's a big talking point. So
Yes.
trying to get that plan back up and running, trying to get that back into the media cycle is something that's going to be important for them going forward.
Yes.
All right, now moving on to a little bit of better news. An Italian company is investing 1.5 billion euros into a renewable energy product in Italy, set to be completed in 2026. This company is going to be investing a large amount of money. They're setting up 80 new facilities in 13 different regions, and they're trying to produce 1.5 gigawatts of electricity for the country renewably. This comes even as interest rates and investment have been incredibly high. Interest rates, when they're high, normally investment is lower. Companies are less willing to take out those loans, but this company's still seeing that as a profitable idea, especially in Italy, a country that needs energy resilience on its own, currently relies heavily on external energy, just like a lot of other European countries.
Yeah, for sure. And we're seeing a rise in renewable energy production across Europe, the Scandinavian countries, Germany, and Italy, all of which have boosted their renewable energy sectors, especially seeing as they're trying to decrease their reliance on Russian natural gas and combat the climate change crisis. And one thing that I think is really interesting about this project is it's not just developing the means to produce renewable energy like solar and wind, but also it's looking into large-scale battery storage for renewable energy, which is something that's desperately needed for it to become a truly viable option for large-scale implementation across countries.
Yeah, and we saw that in Germany. Germany has the capacity to produce enough energy to sustainably run their country for an entire year off of just maybe a couple months, maybe even days in some instances with their current renewable energy setup. They just don't have the battery storage to enable that. So this money is going to R&D that battery storage systems, and it's definitely something to keep an eye out on in the close future.
Yes, indeed.
All right, that has been This Week in the Eastern Mediterranean and Eastern Mediterranean Times. Monday, October 30th. I've been Martin Mont, your host.
And I'm your host, Joshua Litke.
All right, have a great week.